I'm really happy to be here tonight. And I mean that literally, because Michelle Bachman had said that she felt Obama's policies were a sign that the end times had arrived. I was absolutely convinced that the rapture would happen once it got here. Fortunately, we had the government shutdown, which stopped Obama's policies for a while and stopped the apocalyptic plot. It's now ticking again. On the other hand, we might think, because if the rapture did happen, most of you would be left behind. We might as well talk about Revelation. More seriously, I do appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the series, I'd like to thank the Dallas area Christian Progressive Alliance and also Northaven for sponsoring this event. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight to talk about the book of Revelation. And I'm quite certain that those who came because Revelation is your favorite book of the Bible. The one that you read over and over again for insight on living. So, well, I'm not that high on usual. I know there's really probably the least popular progressive Christians, and I suspect that many people would sympathize with MSNBC host Lawrence O'Donnell. What's his show, The Last Word? His take on the book of Revelation was, the book of Revelation is a work of fiction, describing how a truly vicious God would bring about the end of the world. No half-smart religious person actually believes the book of Revelation. I knew a man once who, whenever he bought a new Bible, the first thing he would do is turn to the back of the Bible and tear out the book of Revelation. Just right out. I mean, he clearly had not actually read to the end, where it says, if anyone takes away the scroll of prophecy, God will take away that which, any share in the tree of life and the holy city. So do not tear the book of Revelation. And why unnecessarily take that chance? It doesn't help Revelation's holy members among Christians, among progressive Christians at least, that the book's message has been so thoroughly co-opted by certain versions of more theologically conservative Christianity that turn Revelation into a timetable for the sequence of events that will literally take place on history's march to the end times. These events in that timetable, for those with eyes to see, are already unfolding. The great suffering, a rapture of faithful Christians to heaven to escape the worst of that suffering. The unveiling of the Antichrist, an agent of Satan who is opposed to God's people. But then Jesus will return and will unleash the armies of angelic hosts who will defeat the forces of evil and usher in God's new age where the righteous will praise God forever. And anyone whose name is not written in the book of life will be cast into the lake of fire. Satan is thrown into the lake of fire. The Antichrist is thrown into the lake of fire. All the wicked who follow Satan and the Antichrist into the lake of fire. All of the sinners into the lake of fire. My desire is to rob the dead into the lake of fire. And I do mean both of them. As the book of Revelation says, where the antidotes go when they die, they don't go to heaven where the angels fly. They go to the lake of fire and cry. That's actually the Nirvana movie, but it's coming. So, for many of those who accept the end times timetable by interpretation, not for everybody who believes that way, but for many, certain political implications follow. So, since the end is near, we don't have to care for the poor. Since the end of the age is near, we don't have to care for the poor. We don't have to work to change unfair social structures that perpetuate discrimination against women, against LGBT people, against ethnic minorities, against the differently able, against the economically less privileged, because God is his time. Given the popularity of this line of argument, is it really any wonder that progressives tend to ignore or avoid or despise the book of Revelation? The interpretation I just described flies in the face of the vision of God's justice that we see in so many other parts of the Bible. Jesus' ministry indicated a concern not only for justice in the future, but for justice in the here and now, in his own ministry and the ministry of those who follow him. How then can we heed Jesus' call to reach out to the marginalized if we turn our backs on the marginalized because we believe this age is about to end? But there's another reason that I think hinders progressives from embracing the book of Revelation. Nobody has any idea what it means. And unfortunately, I count myself in that number. It's full of bizarre and mysterious symbolism, and to make matters worse, somebody can't tell this from reading your English Bible. The Greek is here. I mean, we literally often don't know what Revelation means. The whole book is an interpretive mind. So while I don't claim to understand all of it, tonight I will try to explain some. And while I can't begin to make sense of every detail, I do think that scholars have shed enough light on the book that we can make sense of many of the details. I can't promise you that you'll leave here tonight actually liking the book of Revelation. I'm not nervous. But I do hope that you'll leave with a better sense of what the book is trying to do, what it's up to. And despite our confusion about the details, the broad contours of the book of Revelation actually make a fair bit of sense in a late first century cultural context. Revelation would not have been as mysterious to its original readers as it is to us. So tonight I'll discuss the place of Revelation in that context, that ancient context. And I'll point out passages in Revelation that actually do provide theological resources for addressing injustice, at least some forms of injustice. I would argue that Revelation can be understood in part as an expression of resistance to totalizing claims of empire. In the case of its original readers, the Roman Empire. I'll also explain how Revelation becomes so associated with the end times schema that I described a few minutes ago. If you're a person preoccupied with apocalyptic anxiety, I have good news for you. Revelation is rapture-free. There is no rapture in the book of Revelation. And I'll explain where that idea comes from also. In conclusion, I'll note some examples of scholars who have used the book of Revelation as a source of hope and inspiration for challenging injustice in the world. This one, not just the world to come. All right. Let me emphasize what I'm going to describe tonight, the line of interpretation that I'm going to discuss, is very, very, very mainstream. It's the sort of thing that you would find in many mainline seminaries like Urban School of Theology. You find it in most religious departments, like my own at SMU, many Catholic schools as well, and even evangelical schools. Many of them, not all, but many would embrace, and that's what I'm talking about tonight. So I'm not describing anything that. Let's begin with the topic. Revelation is a translation of the Greek word apocalypsis, which literally means uncovering or revelation. In it, someone named John describes a revelation from God. John receives this revelation from an angelic messenger. Now, we don't know who John is. Early Christian readers understandably tried to connect John of Revelation with the Gospel of John and with Jesus' disciple John, but we don't have enough us, it's the only ancient apocalypse, the title, apocalypse we encounter. But the truth is that the apocalypse was a very common genre in early Judaism, appropriated by early Christianity. There are many apocalypses in ancient literature, or several of these, that we have and that we know of. Typically, an apocalypse describes an unveiling of heavenly realities, some type of revelation of previously unknown heavenly truths. A spiritual mediator of some type, an angel, comes and guides the recipient through his visionary experience, perhaps through a journey to the heavens, perhaps through a journey through hell, helps to explain some of the features that the person encounters. The person's usually a he. The visionary sees events that are taking place or that are soon to take place, or sees events that happen in heaven. And there's the idea that there's a connection between what happens in heaven and what's happening here on the earth. Some of the images that the visionary sees are bizarre, strange, twisted, hybrid animals made up of different parts, cataclysmic events, lots of symbolism, some of which ancient leaders would have been able to figure out, and some of which is almost completely indecipherable. The vision often describes the salvation of the faithful, the damnation of the wicked, or both. Scholars typically argue that apocalypses were written within communities that were experiencing suffering and persecution, or at least were anxious about the possibility of suffering and persecution, or perceived themselves to be suffering. Apocalypses, the genre, they protest the current order of things, but they affirm that God is still ultimately in charge of the universe, that God will intervene in history to right the wrongs, to reward the faithful, and to punish the wicked. And in that sense, apocalypses, like the book of Revelation, have a very positive purpose to encourage the faithful to persevere. Again, we have several other Jewish and Christian apocalypses that scholars can compare the book of Revelation to. So, the book begins. I'm going to describe a lot of the contents of the book of Revelation. I thought about trying to put it up on slides on the screen, and it's just too much text. It's just not worth it. So I'm going to draw word pictures of bizarre and inexplicable imagery for you. You can follow that way. The book begins. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave John to show to his servants what must soon take place. It's going to happen. And he made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who bore witness to the word of God and to the testimony of Jesus Christ, all that he saw. So John has a vision. He's supposed to tell what he saw. John encounters an angel, but also Jesus himself, who tells John, write what you see, what is, and what is to take place hereafter. So it's going to happen soon. Of course, John does just that. For those not familiar with the book, I'll describe its contents. You're going to have to sit back, get comfortable, relax. I was not able to arrange an open marker tonight. I think it's more loud. John starts off by writing 7 letters to 7 churches. Those churches were all in Western Asia. Ephesus, Pergamum, Smyrna, others. And the addresses of these letters indicate that the author is very concerned with conditions in Western Asia Minor, Western Turkey. Some of these churches face the temptation of false prophets. One of these churches has already lost a member to persecution. Other churches are tempted by idolatry. Some run the risk, a completely different type of risk, of complacency in their faith. They are not spiritually fervent enough. So the churches face a variety of challenges. It's important that there are 7 of the churches. Does anybody know what 7 means in ancient literature? I couldn't hear you. I'm so sorry.
I don't remember right off.
You don't remember right off, all right? Perfect wholeness. So perfection in the sense of wholeness. So since there are letters to 7 churches, the idea is anyone who has an ear, listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Anyone who has an ear is supposed to hear it. Not just a member of those churches, but anyone who has an ear, listen to what the Spirit is saying. What follows after these letters to 7 churches is a lengthy vision of what Jesus describes to John, what must take place after this. John is transported in the Spirit to the very throne of God, where heavenly creatures and heavenly elders worship God. The one sitting on the throne, God, holds a scroll. The scroll can only be opened by one worthy to open it, the Lamb, who is standing nearby. This, however, is no regular lamb, because it is dead, it has been slaughtered. All right, any guesses on who that's supposed to be? That's Jesus, the sacrificial lamb that has been slaughtered on the cross. But here's how bizarre it is. It's Jesus as a lamb with 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent into all the earth. The scroll has been sealed with 7 seals. The Lamb opens each seal of the scroll one by one, and as each seal is opened, a new catastrophe befalls the earth. So the first 4 seals unleash the 4 personality apocalypse, who bring destruction and devastation to the earth. When the Lamb opens the 7th seal, 7 angels began blowing their trumpets. Each time they blow a trumpet, more disaster on the earth. After the 7th trumpet, John sees a great red dragon and 2 beasts that try to devour all of the faithful, that try to conquer humanity. And the second of these beasts has the number 666 on its forehead. After the angels, we get 7 plagues, 7 more angels, pouring out bowls of wrath. Each angel pours out its bowl of wrath. A new plague strikes the earth. A new wrath comes down. One of these angels shows John a vision of a figure that he identifies as the Great Whore, sitting on a scarlet beast. Her name is Babylon the Great. And so we have the Great Whore of Babylon, who is drunk with the blood of the saints, with the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. Soon, however, another angel arrives, proclaiming that Babylon the Great is fallen, and there's great rejoicing in heaven. Then, the armies of heaven come, clothed in white linen, following a rider on a white horse. His clothes have been dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. On his robe and on his thigh are inscribed the words, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Fairly clear cries of the These armies defeat the kings of the earth and the beasts who oppose God. Satan himself is thrown into a pit for 1,000 years, then released for a final battle, then thrown back once and for all into the lake of fire where he is tormented forever. Next, the dead are judged, the faithful rewarded, the unfaithful tried. A new heaven appears, a new earth appears, a new Jerusalem appears. Jerusalem is made out of gold, its walls are adorned with jewels, and its gates are made of pearls, the pearly gates. All of the servants there worship God and the Lamb. And there will be no light of lamp or sun, for the Lord God will be their light. And they will reign forever and ever. And the angel told John that these were the things that soon must take place. And the book ends with Jesus proclaiming, "Surely I am coming soon." So did you get all that? I once heard a New Testament scholar, Elaine Pagels, rush through all that without once taking a breath or looking at her notes. Amazing. Let me focus on a few of those passages along the way and try to make some sense of it. First of all, I'd like to go back to the 7 churches in Western Asia Minor: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. These are the cities where those churches were located. As I mentioned before, the challenges facing these churches were diverse. We can observe one thing they had in common. These were all cities where the Roman imperial cult was prominent. Now, the Roman some forms, people offered sacrifices on behalf of the Roman emperor. Or perhaps they offered sacrifices to the guardian spirit of the Roman emperor, the genius of the Roman emperor. In other cases, people offered sacrifices to the emperor as a deity. The Romans propagated the idea that the emperor was a god, one to be worshipped, one to be served, one to be obeyed. This expectation caused a problem for Jews and for Christians, who both in different ways affirmed one God. They did not worship the emperor, because to do so was to worship a false god. But those living in the 7 cities of Western Asia Minor would have felt at least some pressure to worship the emperor. We know that Ephesus and Smyrna sometimes competed with each other in honoring the emperor at festivals. Pergamum had received permission to build a temple to the emperor way back in 20 BCE. And in fact, in the letter of the church of Pergamum, there's a reference to the throne of Satan, which may be a reference to the imperial children. People in Thyatira worshiped the emperor as Apollo incarnate, as the son of Zeus. Sardis, in 26 CE, was one of 10 cities that were competing for the right to build a temple to the emperor. They lost over to Smyrna, one of our other cities. So these were cities where emperor worship was an important part of social and civic fabric. There were a lot of gods. What ties them together in some ways seems to be the imperial cult. So, if we imagine that the imperial cult is an important part of the context of the letter, let's see how that concern illuminates a couple of passages. If you go back and look at Revelation, you might look at chapters 12 and 13. That's what I'm going to summarize here. In chapter 12, the 7th angel has just blown his trumpet when a great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. The woman was with child, and she cried out in her pains of birth, and in anguish for delivery. But then another sign appeared in heaven. This time a great red dragon, with 7 heads and 10 horns. The dragon stood before the woman, waiting for the child to be born, so that it could eat the child. Now, this is one of those places in Revelation where we actually get some guidance. Our author tells us who is the child. Well, we get some description. A male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. Okay, who might that description be? Who is a male child who's going to rule all the nations with a rod of iron? We then learn that the the child swept up to God into his throne. So the child is a good guy. It's Jesus. The child is Jesus. The woman, probably the people of Israel, although later Western interpretation reads that as Mary, flees into the wilderness. Okay. Now, war breaks out in heaven between the Archangel Michael and his angels, and that red dragon and his angels. Okay, so this red dragon is against the people of God. The dragon and his angels are thrown out of heaven, and we are thrown above, because the book again explains the simple. According to 12:9, that great red dragon that was thrown down, that ancient serpent, is the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. All right, so the devil is persecuting the child and the woman. The dragon continues to pursue the woman, who's fled out of the wilderness. The dragon was angry with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring. Since her child's in heaven, the rest of her offspring, and the Bible tells us who those offspring are. Those who keep the commandments of God and bear testimony to Jesus. So the children of the woman are Christians. Satan, the dragon, is persecuting Christians. We need the dragon while another 10 diadems on 7 heads. This beast is part leopard, part bear, part lion. The dragon, Satan, gives this beast some of its authority. One of the heads of the new beast has experienced a death blow. This is going to be important. A mortal blow that somehow has healed. Remember the head that's been mortally wounded, somehow heals. The whole earth follows this first beast, and in doing so, worships the red dragon and has empowered the first beast. The first beast makes war on the saints. We're going to have a second beast in a minute. That's why I call that the first beast. Now, we begin to get some hints about what it is this first beast is supposed to represent. Listen to how the beast from the sea is described. Authority was given it over every tribe, every people, every tongue, every nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it. In a first century context, in Western Asia Minor, if you talk about something that has authority over every tongue, every people, every tribe, every nation, what might that something be? It's the Roman Empire. It's the Roman Empire. All the more so if you know that standard Roman propaganda was that Rome ruled not just the territory of its empire, but the entire world. Rome claimed to rule the entire world. And so here we see the idea. Everyone on earth is worshiping, except for those whose names are written in the book of life, the saints. Now, perhaps this anxiety about Roman rule illuminates this reference to that head on the first beast who has been mortally wounded and yet had healed. A lot of scholars think this is a very specific reference to the Roman Emperor Nero. Nero had died in 68 CE, he committed suicide, it was somewhat mysterious. And decades later, there were still rumors that maybe Nero was going to come back from the dead, or that Nero was still alive. Maybe he was living in Parma, where Rome's enemies were, gathering armies to march on Rome. There were Nero sightings in various parts of the empire. You could see Nero dying in cities, just like Elvis. People thought Nero was going to gather an army and come back. So some scholars think that this idea of the head that was wounded, but has healed, is a reference to the fear of Nero coming back. Others say, no, maybe this reflects concern about an emperor who is Nero-like. And so it's if Nero is coming back. Now, why would Nero coming back, whether resurrected or just another emperor like Nero, why would that trouble Christians? Because Nero persecuted Christians outright. Nero was a notorious persecutor of Christians. So there's some anxiety about the Roman emperor persecuting Christians. All right, that's the first beast with one of the heads, more than that's coming out. Let's go to the second beast. A new beast comes out of the earth. Beast number 2. This one has horns like a lamb, the voice of the dragon. The second beast exercises authority on behalf of the first beast, who receives its authority from the great red dragon that we know as Satan. Okay? So there are all expressions of Satan. The second beast makes the whole earth worship the first beast. They must worship this whole image, the statue of the first beast. And those who don't worship the first beast, the second beast kills. The second beast makes everyone to be marked on the right hand or the forehead with the number of its name. The number of its name. So that no one can sell without the mark of the beast. Now this is the most famous part of Revelation. The number of its name. What is the number of the name of the beast? 666. 666. This beast has usually been interpreted as an Antichrist figure, which is clearly an Antichrist figure, although I will point out that Revelation doesn't use the term. The term is not a. What does it mean that this beast has the number of 666? The writer gives us an explicit clue. This calls for wisdom, he says. Let him who has understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. The writer explicitly says he's talking about a person, a human, and says you have wisdom to figure out the number for it yourself. Now, for this to make sense, you have to remember that in the Roman world, they did not have Arabic numbers, right? Instead, you use the same characters of the alphabet for your numbers. Think Roman numerals. It's the same in all ancient languages. You don't have numbers. You have to use the letters of the alphabet. If letters correspond to numbers, and letters have numerical values, then every word has a numerical value. Let me give you just an example of what I mean in English. I'm making this up. A, B, C, D, E. This is sign value, just going through like that. Somebody named Abe. What would their value be? 8. 1 plus 2 plus 5. 8. So every word has a numerical value. This is how ancients did numbers. For example, there's a famous graffito at Pompeii who says, I love you, whose number is 545. That's love. So if we can figure out whose name 666 represents, then we might be able to tell who the writer is referring to. And it turns out the best candidate for that is Nero. Caesar Nero. 666 appears to be the numerical value for Caesar Nero. Now, it's a little complicated getting because to get to Nero, you actually have to switch over to Hebrew. In Hebrew, Caesar Nero adds up to 666. Revelation is written in Greek. So the writer is doing a wordplay and number play that requires knowledge of another language. Okay, so it's a complicated. But for about 200 years, it's been the dominant for New Testament scholars. 666 represents Caesar Nero. So, again, the beast is the Roman Emperor. What's it mean that nobody can buy or sell who doesn't have a mark of the beast? This could be a reference to the image of the emperor on Roman coins. You can't engage in commerce without using Roman coinage and have the image of the emperor. So interpreted this way, the dragon and the two beasts represent the demands of the Roman Empire for loyalty and acquiescence, even to the point of worshiping the beast, even to the point of literally worshiping the Roman emperor, and in doing so, giving divine legitimacy to Rome's imperial domination. The risk for not worshiping the emperor, the dragon, is death. And the dragon has already made war on the children of the woman. All right, let's be moved in the spirit to another passage that I think shows us concern about the Roman emperor. Just after an angel has poured out the seventh bowl of God's wrath. Wrath is on the earth. That angel tells John, come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who is seated upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and with the wine whose fornication the dwellers on earth have become drunk. And so then John is carried away in the spirit to another scene, into a wilderness, where he sees a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, full of blasphemous names, with 7 heads and 10 horns. So it's a lot like the first beast, actually, from the sea. And this woman is clothed with the entire wealth, purple and scarlet cloth, gold and jewels and pearls. And on her forehead is written a name, Babylon the Great, mother of whores and earth's abominations. She's drunk with the blood of the saints, and the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. From the writer's perspective, the whore of Babylon is someone for whom Christian blood provides intoxicating drink. What in the world does this mean? Once again, we get a clue. Thank God for that angelic mediator. He tells John, I will tell you the mystery of the woman, and the beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns that carries it. This calls for a mind with wisdom. He's saying, pay attention. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. The 7 hills of Rome. The 7 hills of Rome. Again, it's a clue to think of the city of Rome. The whore of Babylon is associated with the city of Rome. The 7 heads are also 7 kings, and maybe these are Roman kings who helped the Romans. But we learn that the 10 horns on those 7 heads, kings that are united and making war on the land. So again, they're persecuting Christians who nonetheless will ultimately be victorious. Ultimately, in fact, as the vision progresses, all of those horns represent kings turn on the whore of Babylon and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. Now, the writer gives us another clue. Actually, the angel does, the angelic interpreter. He tells John, okay, the woman that you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. In a first-century context, this has got to be Rome. This has got to be Rome. It can only be Rome. Now, why would Rome be equated with Babylon? Anybody want to make any guesses?
This Babylon overthrew Judah and Israel and authored the exile.
Exactly. The Hebrew Bible, it's Babylon who destroys the first temple and puts the elites of Jerusalem into exile over in Babylonian exile. So the Babylonians destroyed the temple in 586 BC. Who destroyed the temple in 7 BC? Romans destroyed the temple in 7 BC. So Rome is the new Babylon. They're both destroyers of the Jewish temple. The first temple and then the second temple. It makes good sense. Babylon is a symbol for Rome. Well, then John sees another angel coming down from heaven saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. God has remembered her iniquities, her deeds, her luxurious living. And all who live in luxury with her will weep when they see her burning. This vision continues. The merchants of the earth will weep. Since no one will buy their cargoes anymore of gold, silver, jewels, pearl, linen, bronze, costly wood, marble, spices, slaves. Shipmasters will weep along with the merchants. Seafarers will weep for the fall of Babylon the Great. All those who have profited economically from the Roman Empire will weep at her passage. Weep at the passage of a system that had generated wealth for some while oppressing others. Those who have worshipped the image of the beast into the lake of fire, so that the Lamb can rule forever. Okay, I'm exhausted, and I think I'm supposed to, because part of the power of apocalyptic texts like this is that they wash over us so rapidly, they're so vivid, so fast, so furious, so incomprehensible. They speed by too fast for us to understand it all, and that's the point. They're supposed to overwhelm us with their images. They're supposed to leave us partly stunned. Now, to many modern Western sensibilities, all of this sounds very grotesque. To an ancient Christian reader, this would have made a lot of sense. It provided Christians with an explanation for the suffering that they either experienced or were afraid of. The sovereign God was temporarily allowing evil forces to rule, but that same God was ultimately going to vanquish those forces and bring in a new reality. The apocalypse gave Christians an incentive to be faithful, to endure suffering, even to the point of martyrdom, rather than submit to the totalizing claims of the Roman order. Viewed from this perspective, Revelation is not nearly as weird was valuable. And even if we modern readers disagree on that point, we can at least see that for ancient readers, this was a message that provided hope. Because its bottom line is that God will ultimately be victorious over evil, but the faithful must remain faithful. Turns out God was wrong. The end of the age did not arrive. And that's why those who cite Revelation and urge us to ignore the work that justice demands are wrong today. Because until we hear otherwise, God's will continues, and God's work remains to be done. But the reading I just described is not the reading that is seen in popular culture, and it's not the reading that we often encounter among some of our fellow Christians. Instead, what we more often encounter is a theology called premillennial dispensationalism, or for those who prefer dispensational premillennialism. Premillennialism is based on the ideas of a minister named John Nelson Darby. Now, he was a British pastor who started developing these ideas around 1829, came to America in 1862, continued developing the ideas that Revelation was an end times time. He said everything's getting worse. This age has got to go to a close. As this age gets closer to the end, things are going to get worse and worse. We'll back that scheme I described back at the end. But then the Antichrist is going to arise, March 666. When the Antichrist comes and is about to put suffering, the truly faithful would be lifted up and raptured to heaven. He gets this not from Revelation, but from Paul's letter to 1 Thessalonians. Darby says, faithful Christians are going to be raptured to heaven, rapture coming from a Latin word meaning besieged or carried off. Under the Antichrist, non-believers and second-rate Christians like me, those who are doctrinally misled, would suffer for 7 years, called the tribulation. But after these 7 years of tribulation, I see some notice the outward will. After the tribulation, Jesus would return and defeat the Antichrist at the Battle of Armageddon and begin a 1,000-year reign of peace. This is where the premillennialism term comes from. Jesus returns before a 1,000-year reign, as described in Revelation chapter 20. Now, Darby developed a whole elaborate system of exactly how this is going to play out, taking verses from Revelation here and there, weaving in verses from other parts of the Bible, especially the book of Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, the Gospels, and other, to come up with this whole system that was going to play out. Subsequent interpreters have taken Darby's system and tried to correlate Darby's timeline with current events. Now, there's a long history of reading Revelation by current events. That goes way, way back. So, for example, in the Middle Ages, the Crusaders thought that the era of the Lord Palestine was the Antichrist. I mean, it goes back much further. But the grand synthesis that we're familiar with from places like Left Behind, that comes ultimately from the Lord. And elements of the Lord. But basically, this scheme from 10 and 10 times is 150 years old and is specifically Anglo-American. This is not a long-lasting teaching of the church. Darby's ideas were spread by a hugely successful Scofield reference Bible. Anybody have Scofield at some point? You confess it. Yeah, thank you. Actually, I knew it was going to be you. Scofield, very good. Cyrus Scofield was a lawyer who became very influenced by Darby's thought, and he wrote study notes for the King James Version of the Bible, interpreting the King James in light of Darbyism, turned it into the Scofield Reference Bible, which appeared on the market in 1909, and has been a best-selling reference Bible ever since then. Scofield himself ended up in Dallas for a while, pastoring at a church. He was mentored to a minister named Louis Ferry Schaeffer. Schaeffer moved to Dallas to go to Scofield's church, and Scofield's church is now Scofield Memorial Church on Abrams. That's his church. for this like premillennial interpretation of Revelation. But they would call the angelical theological God something else. It's Dallas Theological Seminary. So Dallas is quite literally a world intellectual center tradition for this type of thought. Now, interpreters in this school of thought have updated the Darby schema, and we all are familiar with this update. So you can plug in the birth and modernization vision, the creation of the new dead, the Soviet Union, the fall of the Soviet Union, the Middle Eastern tensions, 9/11, America's election of a black non-citizen Muslim president. They all fit in to this apocalyptic schema of anxiety. You might gather that I'm not particularly persuaded. But I will point out that the language of Revelation is so mysterious and bizarre that it lends itself to people reading the anxieties of their own times into it. That part I like. That actually makes sense to me. The problem is that with enough effort and ingenuity, you can read anything you want in the book of Revelation. There's a lot of anxiety in the world, and a lot of room in Revelation to find it. Let me give you one example of how you work hard and find anything in Revelation. At one point in Revelation, angel number 6 blows a trumpet, and a voice declares, "Release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates." Now, where's the Euphrates River today? Iraq. Clearly, this is referring to the Gulf Wars. Revelation 3. Now, 4 angels are released. They kill 1/3 of humankind. The clincher, so there's destruction in the place associated with this trumpet and the Euphrates. Now, the clincher that is over in chapter 9, the writer describes an army of locusts that will terrorize the earth. These locusts will torture all of those who don't have the seal of God on their foreheads. And we find that when the 5th trumpet is blown, these locusts have swarmed all over the earth, and they have a king over them. The king of the locusts, his name in Hebrew is Abaddon. Abaddon, destruction. His name in Greek, we're told, is Apollyon, which means destroyer, destruction, destroyer. Well, I was the hearer, but I'm told that the word Saddam means confronter, which is really close to meaning to destruction and destroyer. And so, in fact, the king of the locust army, this is clearly a reference to Saddam. And I can prove it further, because you know what verse that's in? 9/11. Very little things. You did have a scope about it. Really not in your system there. So in real life, there's no connection between Saddam Hussein and 9/11. But if you work hard enough, you can get there through the book of Revelation. Okay, I can't leave you with that depressing thought. Let me give you some examples of those who find a message to go, and then we'll stop for questions and discussion. Let me give you 3 examples. New Testament scholar Elizabeth Schuster teaches at Harvard Methodist School, and she finds a message of hope in Revelation. She argues that apocalyptic texts like Revelation are designed to evoke hope and to call forth the reader's participation in a new world order, indeed, one characterized by God's justice. Schuster writes, Revelation constructs a world of vision that challenges the symbolic discourse of Rome's colonizing power. It does so by fashioning a rival symbolic discourse of power and empire that seeks to unmask the force of evil sustaining Rome's dominion. Revelation seeks to motivate the audience to pay obeisance solely to God and not to the Roman state, religion, and clothes. The book makes the same claim to any reader in any context where an empire demands richer. And he's shown the fruitfulness of reading Revelation through the lens of African American experience. He draws parallels with something described in the book of Revelation and something of African Americans, especially in the midst of the civil rights struggle. He says Revelation often resonated with African Americans. Revelation showcases Jesus' vulnerability and nonviolent resistance. For all of the Bible's ignore in Revelation, Jesus is the Lamb that allowed itself to be sacrificed. Jesus is a conquering lion who uses lamb-like means, and his followers are to use similar lamb-like means of nonviolent resistance. The message of the interpreters like these is that even if we have to walk away from Revelation eschatological expectation, even if we find other aspects of Revelation's message unappetizing, we can still heed John's call for faithfulness and resistance. Faithfulness to the Lamb, resistance to any conflation of the divine and the national, any conflation of God and country, resistance to any state seeking domination, resistance to those who benefit economically and accrue wealth unto themselves by collaborating with the state, devoted to empire and domination. Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Thank you. So we've got time for questions, discussion, and comments. Okay, I knew you would.
Given the difficulty in the theological complexity of the theological interpretation of the Revelations, and the wild, speculative kind of interpretations that can result from it, and he demonstrated here tonight, my question is, why was the book of Revelations ever included in the canon in the first place? And Paul spoke pretty clearly in writings about the suffering of the Christians and the yoke of the Roman rule, and the ultimate triumph of living the Christian life in pretty clear language, without going through all of this lurid kind of language in Revelation. What that means today?
And it's grotesque to us. It just wasn't grotesque to ancient leaders. It was a type of literature that many of them would have been accustomed to. And so it was something that would have come across as mysterious and overwhelming. And they might have gotten the point of some of it without making the point of other parts of it. But it was not, for many readers, would not have been off-putting the way that it was to us. So it's grotesque to our sensibilities in ways that would have been different. Now, having said that, why did they accept it in the canon? Probably because it was attributed to John. And so there were many Christians who go, look, this is John. I was a disciple of John, the Gospel of John, written by John. Now here's the irony. The Gospel of John nowhere says it's written by John. That's just the title. We call it John. First, second, third John. Nowhere says they're written by John. We call it first, second, third John. Revelation says it's written by John. We used to call it Revelation. But in the 3rd century, a church father in Dionysius wrote a study of Revelation, which he said, look, this is so different. This is clearly not the sent out book of the Gospel of John. I read it. I read this book. He called into question its authorship. And a lot of the Eastern church after that was very reluctant to include Revelation. Nonetheless, it ends up in the New Testament. But you still have people along the way who still know what to do with it. Even somebody like Martin Luther can say, I just don't find much in the book of Revelation to commend it. So he would share your assessment.
Well, I appreciate your quoting this. He who has ears to hear, let him hear, because I don't hear too well, but I heard too well.
I'm glad.
And systematically studying Revelation, I'm a minister. So
Certainly people have made that suggestion. You know, it's a pretty complicated issue because on the one hand, there are the types of mental illnesses that you're talking about, voices, hallucinations. People have that. At the same time, cross-culturally, we have a lot of people who have all sorts of visions, and in some cultural contexts, visions are more accepted than in others. So the question we ultimately can't answer, but that's not what I'm asking is, was the author having some kind of vision, regardless of whatever validity that experience is, or was it something that we could say is neurologically mental illness? It's an interesting idea. But we do know that in that culture, these types of visionary experiences were more accepted.
Yeah. Now, he was in exile. You use the term frequently that there's a lot of anxiety. That's often the dynamic that feeds this type of weird interpretation. So I appreciate any comments you can give us.
Well, the other thing, there are two questions in that. I think they're great questions, especially coming from somebody with background in psychology. The one question is, what is the experience of the writer? And I think the writer has some type of vision. Now, again, what's the reality behind that vision? I can speculate. But I think the writer is writing some type of vision. But then there's also the question of why did communities find the works of Gilbert that he wrote? Why did it resonate with them? And so then we have our whole community that's characterized by anxiety. Right? So it's not just the writing of it, it's the reception as well. The reception of it as well. So yes, I can't think of any specific references like that, but they are definitely there. And what would give rise to this type of visionary experience?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was an excellent question.
I've read from New Testament scholar, the book of Revelation is the most violent piece of religious literature in the world. I was wondering if you're talking about it encouraging us to resist empire's control, so that resistance would also be violent.
I don't know that I would call it the most violent book in the world, because I think this type of violence and bloodshed is characteristic of a lot of popular works. So it comes with a territory of not every Christian popular work, but many of them. I don't think this particular work is calling for violent resistance, because for all the violence that's there, and I'm not trying to excuse or defend it because it's there, but the violence is not done by the children of the woman, the saints who are being persecuted. It is God who intervenes and overthrows evil forces. The saints are supposed to endure and remain faithful until God does that. So you have this theme of resistance. Don't give in to the demands of empire. But you don't have a call for violence. God's agents are doing violence. So I don't think it's trying to motivate leaders towards violent resistance, so much as refusing to give in to the demands of empire. But the fact that there is so much violence does raise all sorts of questions of the ethics of interpretation. What's not doing with that? And you certainly find many interpreters who point out there's a lot of violence here. And even if it's not the saints who are doing that violence, you're still seeing the depiction of violence as a means to bring about change and judgment, even if it's God's agents who are doing it. And some readers find that problematic. You have other readers who emphasize that it's the Lamb that the followers are worshiping. The Lamb who has allowed himself to be sacrificed. The Lamb who has allowed himself to be slaughtered. And it is the Lamb that's worshipped, and the Lamb that the saints follow. And so you have people who read Revelation and argue that it's advocating explicitly, quote unquote, advocating pacifism, which I've always thought was Spirit as well. So I don't think the general question is ever completely resolved, because it's a mishmash of land who's given itself up. The land's word is like a sword, but the land never kills it. But there's plenty of Bibles elsewhere. Good point. Hi.
Do you think he's just looking at it from a very simplistic viewpoint where you said the early days? And if you just look at it, taking away all the symbolism and all of that, looking at it maybe as good versus evil. And we were talking about the African Americans in their struggles in the Civil War, slavery. I was thinking about my grandparents' generation and the Dust Bowl, the Depression. And we said the term early days. When you take away all the symbolism and what it could mean and what it might mean, maybe some people just look at it as hope. The early days represented hope. You know, they have all this message of true life. And all of a sudden, when life is ended, they'll be rewarded because they go to these early days and heaven and all that. And maybe it was just a place of hope for a lot of people. So there's a hopefulness in a very simplistic way of looking at it.
No, I think that's right. She's kind of saying that an expression of hope is the whole idea of ending up in this heavenly city of early gates. And the hope that we know that has gone to people in rough times, as they hope that at least in the hereafter there will be something better. And it's described as a place where there is no suffering. There's only eternal praise. Now, we might or might not think that's pie in the sky, so to speak. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But it definitely has been mentioned as provided hope to people in communities in Christian history. Whatever else it is provided hope. When it becomes problematic, is when we defer the hope so much to the afterlife that we stop working to change what's going on in the here and now. But that's not what we're describing. We're talking about people finding hope in rough times. So another things, yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious about social justice in the book of Revelation, my opinion, really. Are there references in the book of Revelation, specifically, like there are in the Old Testament, the New Testament, with regard to the alien, the poor, the hungry, the prisoner, the widow? They all serve them in a way that's considered social justice today.
Those are not explicit. So the place where those are not very explicit in the book of Revelation. The place where we see the concern with social justice is on the very specific theme of resisting imperial domination, resisting a state that calls for loyalty due only to God, and collaborating with those who are profiting from a state that operates through domination. So I think that one can see an anti-imperial ideology in Revelation. That's a theological resource. Resistance towards colonization, resistance towards worship of the state, towards the deflation of God and country. But the other aspects of social justice that you were describing are not, that's just not the concern of the book. It's not there. Yeah. You know, there are other parts that are problematic as well from that perspective. The whole portrayal of women in Revelation. Right? The one positive character is the woman who's giving birth to the child. And that's a positively depicted female, and that she at least is good and God preserves her, although she doesn't have a lot of power. But she does give birth to Jesus, the baby, and the church, those who keep God's commandments. But I would not characterize the great whore of Babylon as a positive female image. And likewise, in the Seven Letters, she gets references to a false prophet named Jezebel. She's not a positive image. So depictions of women in Revelation, not positive. So, and I'm definitely not somebody who says, oh yeah, we claim all of them. You just read them, right? It's all fine. No, if we read it in some context, we can find some degree of context. I think there's a lot there that's not all that useful.
A real obstacle that we're facing today is this interpretation interpretation of Revelation that doomsday is going to be precipitated by a one world government and a one world religion. And so there's a belief that anything that looks or smells like government, good, bad, or indifferent, is going to lead towards this. But the truth is that happened under Rome. That is literally ancient history. And during that time, Christianity and other anti-imperial movements were able to spread like wildfire with no borders, no border checks, no immigration or any obstacles like that. And my opinion is that the rich are not going to repeat that mistake. Globalization notwithstanding, they're going to only want that for themselves, while keeping us pigeonholed in the nation states and perhaps even city states to restrict movement physically and movement of ideas. So I was hoping that this might help dispel this false prophecy. I sometimes call it theological malpractice.
That's a good thing. Well, I do think that the origin of this whole idea that there's going to be a one world government comes from the fact that every nation, every tongue, they're all worshiping the beast. And so that seems to be the idea that there's one government that everybody is worshiping, that they're worshiping the beast. And that sometimes there are 10 kings that are united, and so some people interpret that more literally. So that's where the anxiety on one world government comes from. And then that gets brought down. So for those who are interpreting along those lines, is it the UN? Is it the Union or the Kings? Is it New World Order that's coming? Lots of anxieties read into that piece. So anybody who urges any level of global citizenship, somebody is accused of advocating the imposition of the one world government, Revelation. It's, I don't think that's what the author had in mind.
Very, very difficult. And one other thing from what I've read just in various pieces of scholarship was that the Greek church didn't care for the book of Revelation, while the Roman church didn't care for the epistle to the Hebrews, and a deal was struck that each would accept the other's head book.
Well, what you do see is we have lists of books that are accepted as scripture by different churches. And so we have to kind of infer what's going on when we see these different lists. But we do have discussions in the East of Revelation. They don't know who is this John. It's not St. John who wrote the gospel. The style is too different. We're skeptical. Western church is not so bothered by that. On the other hand, the book of Hebrews doesn't say who it was written by, for whatever reason that didn't bother the Eastern church, but it did bother the Western church. And so you do have these two wings of the church who are concerned about different books. But they both got accepted and ultimately ended up in the covers of the same book. We should. Unless somebody